Tonight, a story about a missing person where fate seems unusually cruel. Less than 1 month after an Ohio man lost his wife to a deadly disease, his son mysteriously disappeared. Brian Shaffer.
On the night of March 31, 2006, a medical student entered a bar in Columbus, Ohio. He was seen talking, laughing and waiting near the exit. But he never left. Brian Shaffer is 27 years old, a second-year medical student at Ohio State University. Brian grew up in central Ohio with his younger brother, Derek. Friends and family describe him as intelligent, sociable, and independent. He is a 6-foot guy, with a good body. On his upper right arm he bears a distinctive tattoo, the Stickman logo from the cover of the Pearl Jam single Alive. In March 2006, Brian's mother, Renee Shaffer, died after a bone marrow disorder. Her death occurred less than 1 month before Brian disappeared. According to family members, Brian was grieving but continued attending classes and clinical obligations. He did not request a leave of absence. Brian was also in a committed long-term relationship with Alexis Wagner, a fellow medical student. Though friends later noted the stress of medical school had caused some tension, the couple remained together. They were scheduled to fly to Miami the following Monday for spring break. Family members believed Brian intended to propose to Alexis during this trip. March 31st marked the beginning of spring break. That evening, Brian met his father, Randy Shaffer, for dinner at an Outback Steakhouse in Columbus. Randy later stated that Brian appeared tired following weeks of intensive study but seemed excited about the upcoming trip to Miami. The dinner was routine. No argument was reported in reports. After dinner, Brian met with his longtime friend William Clint Florence. The two planned to spend the evening in the Arena District. Brian invited his brother Derek and Derek's wife Maureen to join them, but they declined, having attended a late comedy show, and chose to return home. At approximately 10 p.m., Brian spoke by phone with his girlfriend Alexis Wagner. They discussed the plan of their Monday flight. Alexis later stated the conversation was normal and affectionate. Following the call, Brian and Clint visited multiple bars including Brothers Bar and the Short North Tavern. Witnesses stated Brian consumed alcohol, moving from buzzed to intoxicated but remained coherent. Shortly before midnight they met Meredith Reed, a friend of Clint's. Meredith offered to drive them back toward campus. She transported them to the Ugly Tuna Saloona, where the Brian last seen. It's a popular bar located on the second floor of the Gateway Film Center complex. The Gateway complex was a mixed-use facility partially under construction. The Ugly Tuna Saloona was accessible primarily by a long escalator and a set of stairs. The building also contained service corridors, utility doors, and emergency exits. However, to use these exits one would have to navigate through employees-only kitchen areas or construction zones. Police would later determine that while alternative exits existed, they were either alarmed, locked, or covered by other cameras on the building's exterior. At approximately 1:15 a.m. surveillance footage shows Brian, Clint, and Meredith ascending the escalator into the bar. Inside, the bar was at capacity. A live band, Salvatore, was playing their final set. During this time, Brian separated from Clint and Meredith. Footage shows him moving through the crowd, sociable and relaxed. At 1:55 a.m. Brian appears on camera near the top of the escalator just outside the bar's main doors. He is speaking with two women later identified as Amber Ruick and Brighton Zacco. The conversation is brief. Brighton later stated Brian was flirtatious and friendly. According to reports, Brian said goodbye to them and walks back through the doors, re-entering the Ugly Tuna Saloona. This is the last confirmed sighting of Brian Shaffer. The bar closed at approximately 2 a.m. and staff began clearing the room. Clint and Meredith waited outside near the escalator to see Brian. But Brian did not exit with the crowd. Clint and Meredith checked the bathroom, assuming Brian had left earlier or walked home without them, so they eventually departed. Brian's apartment was located just 6 blocks away. But he never arrived. The following morning, Brian missed his scheduled plans. Saturday passed without contact, and same. Sunday. By Monday morning, Brian had not arrived at the airport for the trip to Miami. Alexis Wagner stood at the gate, waiting for him. Reports suggest Wagner tried to contact him many times with him, but he never showed. This is the day Brian was reported missing. Columbus police immediately reviewed surveillance footage from the Gateway complex. Detectives cataloged every individual captured entering and exiting the building during the relevant time window. More people entered the Ugly Tuna Saloona than left it. Brian Shaffer was the only patron unaccounted for. Investigators identified potential unmonitored routes, including a freight elevator and a construction exit. However, the freight elevator required a key, and the construction exit led to a secured area monitored by external cameras. Searches expanded to nearby streets, alleys, dumpsters, and the Olentangy River. Police dogs were deployed inside the bar and the construction site, but still no scent alerts were confirmed. Meredith Reed cooperated fully with investigators. She voluntarily submitted to a polygraph examination. According to police reports, she passed the test. William Clint Florence also provided an initial statement to give polygraph test. However, as the investigation deepened, Clint retained an attorney. On the advice of his counsel, he declined to submit to a polygraph examination. Police publicly stated that refusal alone did not constitute evidence and did not imply guilt, but the refusal created lasting friction between Clint and the Shaffer family because Clint was his childhood friend and also he is the guy Brian go to bar that day. The two women seen in the final footage, Amber and Bryden, were also identified and interviewed later. They were ruled out as suspects. The band, Salvatore, was also interviewed. They recalled nothing unusual. Brian's bank accounts and credit cards were frozen in time, so no activity occurred. No passport usage or border crossings were documented. For months, Brian's phone was inactive. Calls went straight to voicemail. However, in September 2006, 5 months after the disappearance, a critical anomaly occurred. Alexis Wagner called Brian's phone before bed, as she often did. Instead of going to voicemail as usual, it rang 3 times. Alexis panicked and hung up, fearing she had the wrong number. She called back immediately. It went to voicemail. Investigators analyzed the call data. They discovered that during those rings, Brian's cell phone had pinged a tower in Hilliard, Ohio, approximately 14 miles northwest of the bar. Singular Wireless later claimed this could have been a network routing glitch common in 2006 technology, or a result of the number being reassigned or briefly active. However, the ping fueled theories that Brian's phone, and perhaps Brian, was still active months after he vanished. Brian's father, Randy Shaffer, dedicated his life to finding his son. He pursued tips from psychics, private investigators, and anonymous callers. He spent countless hours searching the banks of the Olentangy River to find his son. In September 2008, tragedy struck again. During a severe windstorm in Ohio, Randy was in his yard clearing debris. A tree branch snapped and struck him, killing him instantly. Randy died without ever knowing what happened to his son. 3 primary theories have emerged to explain the locked room mystery of the Ugly Tuna Saloona. Brian, overwhelmed by the recent death of his mother and the pressure of medical school, staged his disappearance to start a new life. If he didn't leave via the public escalator, he may have changed clothes or blended into the band's entourage to bypass the count. Although the guestbook post was a hoax, Brian had frequently told friends he wanted to live on an island and play music. He was days away from a vacation with a woman he intended to marry. Intoxicated and disoriented, Brian attempted to leave through a service door or construction exit, fell into the construction site, and his body was either concealed by debris or deeply entombed in the building's foundation. Cadaver dogs did show interest in the construction area, though no confirmed hit was made. The case of Brian Shaffer remains one of the most baffling missing persons cases in American history. The case was never reclassified as a homicide. It was never definitively ruled a suicide, and in 2008, for legal purposes regarding his estate, Brian Shaffer was declared dead in absentia. Alexis Wagner eventually moved on, marrying and starting a family, though she remained cooperative with investigators for years. Brian's brother Derek remains the last surviving member of his immediate family. Detective John Hurst, the lead investigator, summarized the frustration: "You can't just vanish." But he did. The final confirmed image remains unchanged. 1:55 a.m. A man stands near an escalator. He waves goodbye to two women. He turns around. He walks back into the bar. And never come out.